Hi, so in this video I want to talk about the concept of solipsism. Now I think this is a really interesting concept in a way to to think about it, but not I wouldn't actually take it as an actual way of seeing the world, but so not to take it literally, or even um, think of it as a way of actually seeing the world, but yeah, as a way of having something, as a way of thinking about it. I think it's really interesting to it's an interesting concept to kind of see what kind of ideas and what kind of implications it has. So in this video, I don't know, I guess I'm going to try to talk about, just a few things about solipsism. Now, when I think of solipsism, one of the first um, ways of looking at this idea is the state of dreaming, right? When you're asleep and when you're dreaming, there is the mind creates. That's how that's one way of looking at dreams. I know. I think there are other ways that I would think of dreams too, but and I think I've talked about it before. Different ways of looking at, briefly. I've just talked about it, I think, but so that's one way of looking at the idea of solipsism, because it is your mind creating this dream world, and it populates it with these characters, and these characters in the dream world, they have their own minds, they have their own personalities, but they're figments of your own mind. They are creations of your own mind, at least in the usual way of looking at and thinking about dreams. Like I said, I like to think of it in different ways too, to think of it in different ways. But yeah, that is the usual way. And yeah, that would be a solipsist world, right? Because it is you, everything that you see around you is creations of your mind, and the other characters, the other minds that are present in that state of dreams, these are also creations of your own mind. So when you are interacting with them, you're basically interacting with figments of yourself, figments of your own imagination. So I think it's a it's one way of looking at it in the context of dreams. And another way to think of it is, like I previously talked about, as to see when you see the world as the actual world as a creation of your mind. In that, um, if the world is a projection of your mind, if your mind creates everything that you see around you in waking life, how do other people fit into this? Are their minds actual minds? And when you interact with them, even though the world that you and these other minds are in, that world might be a creation of your mind, or could it be that it is, in some way, it's also, how how does it work that it's a creation of your mind? And if these other minds are real, then how do they project their own um, their own projections of the world? So how does that work? Are these two separate projections, yours and theirs? Is it one projection? How would that work? So that's an interesting thing to think of it in that way. And so yeah, if it is that, if the world is a creation, if the real world is, a representation or a projection or a creation of your mind, and you if we like to think of it in this way, we can think of it in a solipsist way, that these other people that you interact with in the real world, these could also be figments of your imaginations and characters instead of actual minds. Yeah, again, I wouldn't take this. I wouldn't take this literally in any way, but yeah, it's interesting to think of it in this way. But yeah, not to be taken literally in any way. Yeah. So, and I think it's pretty interesting, and it has some interesting implications. This whole idea of solipsism. Um, Again, I don't think it is true, but I mean that I mean that's too much of a direct statement. I don't know, but yeah, I think it's a really interesting concept though to think of it in and to think of the world in solipsist terms and to I mean it can be can it make a person feel completely lonely? Because if that were, if the world and all the other characters and everything that you interact with in a solipsist world, if that is actually true, can it make a person feel an absolute type of loneliness, that you are in an in some kind of an absolute sense you are lonely, and like that's it? So yeah, or but maybe it's not. Maybe, I mean, while you are to think of the dream world as a solipsist world, while you are dreaming and you are interacting with that, with the dream world and the dream characters, it doesn't feel meaningless. And could you think of the real world, if you were to think of it in a solipsist way, could you think of it in that way too, that even if these characters and these other minds that you're interacting with in a solipsist world, even though they would be just a part of your imagination, would, does it necessarily mean that it is meaningless? I don't know, I think not. I think it still might have some meaning, and it's not completely, yeah, it's not completely without any sort of meaning. But yeah, like I said, I don't, this to think of it seriously, this idea just doesn't appeal to me, to take it in a serious kind of way. I just think, but I do think it's really interesting to think in this way. And I just wanted to say a few things about it to start off. There's a lot more. There's a lot more things to say about this concept, and many other implications to think about, and some interesting, yeah, some interesting stuff. But yeah, I just wanted to say some things on this to kind of, just to say a few things. So yeah, this is kind of what I wanted to say for this video. Maybe there was something else too. I don't remember. No. Anyway, so yeah, maybe if I make another video about it, I'll talk about it more. And if you have any of your own thoughts on this, if you have any of your own way of thinking about this idea of solipsism, yeah, let me know and tell me if do you find it interesting. I personally find it to be, I think it's not a good idea to take literally. I think it can be, yeah. So I think I would say again to not take the concept of solipsism literally, or take it seriously in a way that to think of the real world in that way. I don't think that's a good idea, and I think it is false to think of it in that way, more than anything. So yeah, that's it. Let me know what you think about this concept, and yeah, maybe I'll talk more about this in a future video, because I barely talked about anything. I just, kind of talked about some few thoughts on this anyway. So yeah, that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next video.